A very good evening to you and welcome to the West Ham Voice on a Monday night, West Ham Weekly. Thank you all for joining me. I hope you're having a good start to the week. Well, something's gone slightly askew just before I came on because I got wind of, now I can't, it came from Sky, and Sky Germany of all places, that we're linked to Conor Gallagher. And apparently we put a bid in, apparently it's in advanced talks. I don't know how true this is because I haven't had a chance to get this corroborated. I guess if it comes from Sky, but then again, even if it comes from Sky, you're never really that sure, are you, anymore, whether a story's really true or not. But if it is true, I think that's fantastic news. I think that would be absolutely amazing news for West Ham. He's a player that I think we all would love to have at the club. He's the kind of footballer that I think everyone would be happy with, everyone would relish. If he comes at a price of something like 25 to 30, 35 million pounds, with add-ons, etc., I think that would be absolutely superb. So watch this space. Like I said, that I literally read it about 6 or 7 minutes before I came online. And I thought, hang on a minute, this is good. This sounds really juicy. And it sounds like something that finally we can be excited about. Excuse me, because, I'm going to talk about transfers anyway throughout the show, but about what's going on behind the scenes rather than, particular transfer targets. I will pick up on one or two transfer targets, not all that inspiring, to be quite honest with you. And I'm going to ask the question about, what involvement is people are having within West Ham to come to some of the targets that have been bandied around. So I'll talk about that in a minute. But like I said, breaking news, literally read it about 5, 6, 7 minutes ago. Apparently, we are interested in Conor Gallagher, and apparently we put in a bid. And according to Sky Germany, I don't know why Sky Germany, according to Sky Germany, apparently we are in advanced talks. So watch this space if it happens. Right. Let's start off with what I was going to talk about the show, and let's start first of all with the games that have been played last week. We had our first game in Australia against Perth Glory, and Jared Bowen, came on second half sub, and he scored a brace. Still doing really, really well. Look, there's been some really interesting performances, some really decent performances in the first two pre-season friendlies against Bournemouth and Perth Glory. But I'm going to just, say, look, I know we've scored 10 goals in 2 games, but let's not get carried away with ourselves. This is all about friendlies. This is all about getting match fit. Half our squad's not there, etc. The caliber of opposition that we're playing is there just to sort of, ease the players in. Fantastic to see some of the young players playing as well. Divine and Barmer got a beautiful goal in that game as well, and Dan Chester's played really well out on the wing. Really, really superb performance, as well as Freddie Potts in the middle of the park, and I'm going to talk about him a little bit more later on. But like I say, let's not get too carried away. I've already started reading on social media. We really need to start bedding these young players in and getting them involved in the first team, etc. Think about the opposition. Now, Dan Chester's, I'm really, really pleased to him. He had a superb game. But Dan Chester's, as an example, was out in Colchester last season, League Division 2 club. Really didn't do much. So you've got to sort of balance it out. You've got to take it all with a little bit pinch of salt. But it's good to see the likes of Scamacca getting on the team on the score sheet. Danny Ings being partnered with him up front. Is that the shape of things to come for David Moyes? Who knows? Let's see what happens. I think we've got a long way to go before we think David Moyes has suddenly had an epiphany in playing 2 strikers on the pitch at the same time. So I'm not reading too much into that either, to be quite honest with you. Pre-season friendlies are there for that. They're pre-season friendlies. They're to get players fit. They're to get them up and running, up to speed, etc. But I'm glad to see some of our senior players, like Bowen, for example. If you remember at the beginning of last season, he looked quite sluggish. So, and I think that was the outcome of not being picked for the England team and all that sort of stuff. So really, really good to see. But, like I say, take it with a pinch of salt. The next game is, of course, on Tuesday. And those of you lucky enough to be working from home or not working or whatever, you can pay a £5 and watch the game on the West Ham website. Well done, West Ham. You could have given it to us for nothing. But it's on at 11 o'clock against Spurs. It's the last pre-season out in Australia, the mini tour, before we return to play Dagenham and Redbridge at Chigwell at the weekend. So before I go any further, let's go into the chat and say hello to everyone and see who's in. And I hope you're all buzzing and well. Good evening to you, Matt. I hope you're well. Thank you for joining, mate. Matt says, don't want Ward-Prowse nor Slabhead Maguire. I'm going to talk about both of them in a moment. But if they do come, it is what it is, and I hope they'll do well for us. The captain situation, I think Cresswell will be our captain, but would like Naif to be a... See, I don't know if it... I think Cresswell will be a vice captain like he was last season, but I'm not so sure he's going to be our main captain because I just don't think he's going to play regularly. Good evening to you, old man. I hope you're well. Thank you for joining, mate. Good evening to you, Ed. Good questions. I hope you asked your sources for the correct answers. No, they gave me more questions than answers, mate. I hope your foot's okay. I hope you're resting up well. Barry, good evening to you. Moyes trying to buy same old has-beens with no sell-on value. Who is in control of transfers? I thought we got a sporting director in to do that. And I'm going to talk about that. It's the kind of the main theme of my show tonight, to be quite honest with you. Anthony, I hope you're well. Good evening to you, mate. This is going to be a disaster window for us. No. You know what I'm like. Half glass full, man. And having said that, I've got to put something in my glass. Good evening to you, Graham. No drinking tonight. First day back at work. Good afternoon, everyone. I doubt there is any forward planning to anything we do, and we just pick through the dross that nobody else wants. Maybe not. I say Stella's at least 5 minutes late. Well, you know, I think I was quite early, all things considered. The show just isn't the same as Stella's on time. Good evening, Epic. I hope you're well, mate. Thank you for joining. I hope you're having a good evening. Peter, good evening to you. Who profits, if I can get your comments up, who profits from the most of these short-term fixes? No one, especially not the club. That's for especially not the playing staff. That's for sure. Good evening, Razor. Serious deal. Moyes must be taken right away. Can do it very cheaply if needed. Tim must say, I'm going if that Moyes is here another day. Sullivan must grow a pair with this cancer Moyes in our club. Wasting the money once again. Tim just starting telling Sullivan, I'm going if Moyes is around one more day. Well, this is really the theme of my show. I'm a bit perplexed and I'm a bit sort of, you know, I was told a few things at the weekend and I went, you are kidding. And I'll tell you what I was told. You know, let me get to it. I've got a, you know, my format. If I miss it, I won't know where I am. But I was told a few things at the weekend and I must admit, I went, really? You know, and it was about, you know, who's in control or who's meant to be. But then I kind of thought about it over the weekend and I thought, who's just told that person that thing to me? Oh, it's an agent. Right. What are agents in for? Agents are in for, you know, they make money when players are being sold. Otherwise, they don't make much money otherwise, do they? Anthony, I see Wolves are going to put a third bid in for Scott, who we don't, why don't we just play Bristol asking price for 25 million? Because if we are going for Gallagher, if we really are, I'd much rather Gallagher with his Premier League experience for that sort of money. But I'm not denying Alex Scott would be a good option. Miss Smith, good evening to you. Wouldn't believe we won a European. Wouldn't believe we just won a European Cup. The amount of whining, little nuggets that populate social media. I was deluded thinking we were somehow different to other fans. Look, I get why people get upset. I try not to. I do at times. Yeah, I do get upset when I hear certain things. But I do try and put these things in perspective. But I think we've got so much information coming at us from all different angles. You know, in this day of social media, we've got we are told a lot of crap. You know, and that's the big problem when, especially in the transfer windows, where we're given an awful lot of guff information, and it's sometimes really difficult to sort out what's true and what's not true. It's difficult for me, and then I do try and speak to as many people. You know, even ironically, even the journalists. Now, I don't think journalists go out and put false stories out. But if they're being fed something, they go, "Well, that's a story. I'm going to put it out." Now, you know, you should try as a journalist to establish whether that story is true or not. But if you're getting that from a source like agents, you're kind of going to want to go, well, you know, if an agent's told me he's representing player X, Y, and Z, then maybe there's an element of truth in it. I'm going to put it out there. The trouble is we believe everything. And that's the big problem, because it is difficult to know what is true and what's not true. And when we start to believing everything, it's easier to get upset. It's easier to get pissed off. You know, when we hear things like we're in for Maguire, or we're in for this player, or we're in for that player, and we're in for so-and-so. And then when it doesn't materialize, or if it doesn't materialize, in the case of players like Maguire, then you get even more upset. It's not that I'm not backing the whiners. Don't get me wrong, Miss Smith. I'm not backing them, but it's kind of understandable why people get wound up and upset. Aaron, good evening to you. Perfect timing. The Karate Kid has just finished. Oh, I'm pleased about that. Imagine if you didn't watch me for the Karate Kid. Oh, fuck me. I hope you're well, Aaron. Miss Smith, calling our manager. That was a bit far. You know, Razor, in all honesty, mate, I do respect you, but try and keep the tone down. Let's see, who else have we got? Good evening, Hammerette. I hope you're well. Thank you for joining. Peter, let's hope Sullivan isn't here long enough to put our club down a division. Well, he's done it before, and he is still I'm sorry to say, Peter, I know you don't like the owners, but unfortunately, he's here for a couple more years. No, mate, no Captain Morgan. No Captain Morgan tonight, just normal Coca-Cola. Let's scroll down, and please, by the way, be civil, Razor and Miss Smith, etc. You can have your differences, but you know, keep it nice. Yeah. Cleaning out the tray, Peter. You're not far wrong, but actually, you know, I was actually caught out from the Gallagher story, so I will look into further into it if I can get any. I've sent out text messages to see if there's any feedback on that. So I will let you know if it comes through. Juha, good evening to you, mate. I hope you're well. Peter, predict when we make our first signing. I'm hoping this week. I really am. I really hope to God we do make a signing this week. Pete Gads, good evening to you. Stussy, good evening to you. I hope you're well, mate. Thank you for joining. Good evening, Henry. Currently walking my dog. Couldn't miss the show. Much appreciated. Aaron was watching Karate Kid, and if that was still on, he wouldn't watch me. Good evening, Chris. I hope you're well. I'm very well, mate. I hope you are too. Peter, what has Gallagher done in the last 18 months? No, he's not done a lot, but I think there's a lot of promise there, to be quite honest with you. I like Gallagher. You know, when he came on the scene on loan, etc. I can't remember where. Where did he play on loan? For me, he's the sort of player that I would be happy to have. I think it's a forward-thinking. Well, how old is he? 22, something like that. 23 years of age. Spending 25 million of Declan's money, or the money that we got from Declan's sale on someone like Gallagher. I think it's the right thing. You know, and that's another theme of my show tonight: is how do we spend the money? And given some of the links that we've been put up against, you know, it kind of worries me if we end up spending money on players like Maguire. But I'll explain why. You know, I actually think Maguire, in essence, wouldn't necessarily a bad thing for West Ham, but not if we're going to end up spending 40 million on him. No. Stel Montana, good evening to you. Stel, thank God Maguire said he doesn't want to come to us and won't take a pay cut, which is all good for us, isn't it? Because I'm in two minds, but I'll explain later. Good evening to you, Daniela. I hope you're well. Thank you for joining. Good evening, West Ham faithful. How are you? Too many shows on at the same time. You and Clanton Booze. I can't help it. You know, they know I'm on a Monday night, so, you know, up to them if they want to compete. Andy, good evening all. Hope you're well. Saturday's game against Perth was a good watch. It was a good watch. It wasn't bad at all. Hammers Mikey. Oldest defence in Europe next year, then Slabhead 31, Zuma 30, Oggy 36, etc. He's not 36, he's 34, but I get you. Yeah, I agree. It's not great. It's not great, but it doesn't look like Maguire is coming to us anyway. David, Stel, we met at the FA Youth Cup semi-final at Southampton. Hope you're well. David, I remember you. I hope you're well too. I'd love Alvarez sitting with Paqueta and Gallagher in front of him would work great. Good shout. Good shout. I like Gallagher, Aaron, but it's an easy link. What's Tim doing? Where's his targets? Like I said, it's something that I read literally just before I came on, so I can't say 100% sure that it's true, but it came from Sky Sports Germany. I hope I hadn't read a duff. If someone wants to look it up and tell me, that would be fantastic. Montana. Now everyone thinks the club revolved around Declan. These pundits will be shocked. We shall have a great season. I have a strong feeling. I don't know why. I feel the same, to be quite honest with you. I said this. I think it's a bit of a blessing in disguise for us that we actually, it's gone. That circus of will he, won't he stay or go, etc. And all these pundits, ramming it down our throats for the last 2 years that Declan Rice is better off elsewhere, how he'd improved Team X, Team Y, Team Z, rather than saying, look how he's improving West Ham United and look how far they've gone with him, winning a cup, finishing sixth, finishing seventh, etc., etc. That's what they should have been talking about. Instead, all they talked about for the past 2 years is where's Declan going? Now I'm glad it's gone, to be quite honest with you. With the greatest of respect to him, I wish him well, not against West Ham United. Do I think he'll win anything? I don't really care, to be honest with you. He's no longer a West Ham player. Will I boo him? No, I won't. Will I clap him? Respect, but that'll be about it. I'm glad it's finished with. I'm glad it's over with. Of course, the next one we're going to have is Paquetá for the next 12 months. Paquetá would be better off if he played in the Champions League, etc. We'll get that. And any other player, it just shows that we can. As much as our football hasn't been great over the past couple of seasons, etc. One of the things is we can get players that play well. We can get players, that will turn heads. And Paquetá will be the next one. He started that last season. I'm sure he'll continue it into this season as well. And then what we'll have is, over the course of the season, Paquetá being linked with so-and-so and so-and-so, and we're going to have to get used to it because with Steidten coming in, he will be bringing in players that will start turning heads. And we'll have more of this as we go along. Good evening to you, Trini. I hope you're well. Mark, good evening to you. Conor is only 23, more like the age we should be buying, perhaps leaked by Steidten in Germany. That's a good shout. Like that one. Good evening, Early Doors. How are you? I'm very well, sir. I hope you are too. Good evening to you, Schmiegel. How are you? Evening to you, mate. Razor. Montana, I also think if Tim buys our players, we'll have a good season too. Moyes, Al Sullivan, please. Excuse me. Montana again. I'm not sure about the Gallagher links, but I take him. Souček will get back to his form when he came over. I think Souček. This is another thing I reckon will happen. I think Souček will revert back to being the sort of player that we know. As I've said it before, I've said it many times before, and I got laughed at a few times. When Declan Rice decided that he wanted to be the box-to-box midfielder rather than just a sitting defensive midfielder, that disrupted our game. That disrupted the flow that we had in the centre of the park. All of a sudden, Souček had to play a different type of game. It affected him. Now, did it work with Declan Rice going further forward? Let's not forget. Souček scored something like 10 goals in the first full season that he was with us. When it changed, all of a sudden, Souček wasn't scoring goals. Did Declan score 10 goals in any of the seasons that he was with us the last 2 seasons? No. What did he get last season? 4? Look, great player Declan is. I know we'll go on to greater things and all that sort of stuff, but I think what we'll do, I think there'll be a blessing in disguise where we will buy a defensive midfielder. We'll have a defensive midfielder that will sit and defend the back line. And then that would allow the likes of Paquetá and Souček and Gallagher, if we buy him, and any other attacking midfielder, Fornals, etc., to go further forward. I think that's what we've been missing in the centre of the park. Right, let's go. I'm going to come back to your comments in a moment, but let's go to the next part of the show. And that, of course, is we've got the other half of our squad back now. The rest of the squad came back from Rush Green. The players who were international duty, so players like Ben Rama and Areola, Cornet, etc., were all back going through their paces at Rush Green. And I dare say most of them, if not all of them, will be available for this the next friendly game against Dagenham and Redbridge this coming Saturday at Chigwell Construction Stadium. And I think this is where we'll start seeing the shape of the kind of team that Moyes may start playing. Like I said a moment ago, I don't take too much into the first couple of games that we played, having 2 up front and all that sort of stuff, because he's not had enough, he's not got that many senior players to pick from. But now, with the other senior players back from international duty, he's got more of a choice. So let's see what he's going to start doing against Dagenham and Redbridge. And then we've got Rennes, and then we've got Bayer Leverkusen before we start our season off. So it'll be interesting to see how they mold in and what Moyes will do when it comes to the friendlies over the next few weeks. The only player that isn't going to be with us for a few more weeks, and probably not back until just before the Bournemouth game, is Mikel Antonio. Mikel Antonio still out, or was out with Jamaica for the Gold Cup. Now, they went out last week. Their hopes were ended by Mexico, where they suffered a 3-0 defeat in the semi-final stages. So he will now have the obligatory 3 weeks off, which means that he won't be back until, as I've just said, until just before our season starts against Bournemouth. Now, another bit of news about Antonio is, of course, he's been linked to some team. I didn't get the name, Al something. Apparently, another Saudi Arabian team. But I've been told that those rumours are not true. And apparently it was all like, we're in advanced talks to sell him, etc., etc. And I've been told apparently, no, not true at all. Other little bit of news is we've signed a couple of our young players. Finley Henrik, the goalkeeper, he's signed his first professional contract with West Ham. He's a talented shot stopper. He was part of the under-18 squad, or the under-18s team that won the FA Youth Cup and the under-18s Premier League South last season, and he was recently named in the England under-17 squad for the 2023 UEFA European under-17s Championship. So well done to you, young lad, for signing your first professional contract. And Freddie Potts has signed an extended 3-year deal. He's already signed professional papers, 19 years of age, and he's fantastic. You can see he was one of the players that played pretty well against Perth Glory the other day. He's just put pen to paper for a deal that goes on till 2026. Barking-born Potts joined the club at the age of 6, graduated from the Academy of Football, signed his first professional papers in 2021, and made his first team debut in the Europa League in December of the same year. He was in most of the matchday squads last season, and he was also with West Ham United on the bench for the final at the end of last season as well. And of course, he's out in Perth, and he's having quite a good time of it as well. So well done to him. Really, really pleased for him. One to watch. Could he be the next Declan Rice? Well, you know what? Guess what position he plays? Yep, defensive midfield. Right, let's go into your chat, and then I'll go into all the transfer stories, and I'll talk about Steidten and all that sort of stuff. Henry, signing Maguire for more than 15 is a sackable offence for Moyes, in my opinion. Montana, we just need a strong ball-winning midfielder. Paqueta will create the goals. Bowen and Soucek will ban them in. Trust people. The players have a massive point to prove. You know what? I make you right. I think it is going to be a big season for us. I know there's an awful lot of doom and gloom, but as I've said, we should no longer be, and we shouldn't be, a one-man team. You know, I don't think last season, ironically, I know Declan Rice won Hammer of the Year. Frankly, I don't think he was Hammer of the Year last season, to be quite honest with you. I think of course, he always plays really well, always gives his best, etc. But no, I'm not so sure whether he really deserved the Hammer of the Year award last season. And I do make you right, Montana. I think we do have a lot of the players do have a point to prove. They don't want to be seen as a one-man team. They want to demonstrate that we can move on. We will get a replacement. I think there's no doubt about it. There are 2 players that have left the club so far at this moment in time, and they are, of course, Lanzini and Declan Rice. So we will get replacements. I'm sure we'll get midfield enforcements. And I just wonder, something's just clicked in my head, and I'll raise it when I talk about the player in a minute. But I think we'll get the right players in. Fingers crossed. We will get a mix. I think we'll get a mix of experience and youth, and I'll explain why in a moment. Flemmer, good evening to you. Evening to you, mate. On my opinion, Paqueta will be best choice as captain. I don't know. You know, I'm in 2 minds. I know other people have mentioned that before, but it's an interesting one. Good evening to you, Vinny. Any truth in Anto? Just mentioned that to Saudi Arabia. No, I've been told there's none at all. Good evening, John. That was a cheeky Guinness. Is that how you qualify as Irish, you fraud? You know, I don't mind a Guinness every now and again, but boy, it's filling, isn't it? Peter, club isn't attractive enough with Moyes and the way he plays football. Good evening to you, Hammers Mikey. Moyes sat in his chair all game looking miserable as sin against Perth. Sat there pissed off because they were playing attacking football, which goes against his style. Come the league, he'll revert to type. Good evening to you, Philip. I'm optimistic as I messaged you a few days ago. 4 or 5 additions, preferably within the Premier League and Championship experience, and it could be a really good season. You did, mate, and thank you for your message. But I really don't think we're getting 4 or 5 players. I think at best we will get 4. And like I mentioned last week in last week's show, I think it'll be one out, one in. I really do. I don't think. I had this debate on Facebook earlier with a couple of people about, they're saying like we need 4 or 5 players, we need this, etc., etc. And I said, well, hang on a minute. We've actually got players in the positions that you're talking about. Now, whether we like the players that we've got in those positions is another matter. But we do have players, we've got 2 left backs, we've got 2 right backs. We do need an additional player in central defence. I think we do need cover for Zuma, Agerd and Ogbonna. We do. And then in midfield, of course, with Lanzini and Rice leaving, we need a couple of additions there. But then when you look at attacking players out on the wings, etc., Bowen, Cornet, Benrahma and so on, we kind of all right. We've got players there as well. And then, ironically, as it stands, we've got 3 strikers. Now, I know, Ings and Antonio, and many would even say maybe Scamacca as well, are not necessarily the strikers that suit us and so on. But we have, if any of those players leave, then I expect us to replace, one leaves, one comes in. So what we're doing is got to prioritize central midfield at the moment. And that's why you're beginning to hear about the likes of Palhinha, and a bid going in for him and so on and so forth. I think we'll at most 4 is what we'll get. I'll be very surprised if any more than that. Vinay, good evening to you. Moyes isn't a cancer, more like a Gollum ring, offers success at a price. Your football soul. Pigads. I don't believe any of the rumours. West Ham have been good at being silent in the past couple of years. They have. And this is the thing. We all go into, like I said, we all go into a frenzy, don't we? All of a sudden, it's like, we're signing this, we're signing that. Why haven't we signed this player? Why have we missed out on so-and-so? Why have we missed out? When sometimes the rumours aren't even true in the first place. Good evening, Jason. I hope you're well. Evening all. 10 goals in 2 games is a good sign. Glass half full. There you go. Glass half full. I hope you're well, mate. Yeah, it is good. But I will take it in context because, the opposition, not great. It will get better. We've got tougher opposition as we go through. It'd be great to beat Spuds, even if it is a friendly tomorrow. Hammer, if Steidten is the head of recruitment, then why are we so strongly linked to Slabhead? And I'll explain that. I'm getting to that in a minute. I will try and explain it. I'll probably mess it all up, but I will try and explain it. Daniela, just been on the Newcastle fan chat channel. They're thinking of putting Ashbury out on the grass is not always greener on the other side, is it? It's not. He went to Newcastle because he wasn't getting any game time. That fucking irony is if he'd stayed at West Ham, I reckon he'd be pushing for a first team place this season. At right back. I really do. Vinay. Steidten will soon be targeting Lingard. Early doors. Hammer, evening. Think it's a case of Premier League experience, I guess. Look, the one thing about, when the season ended and the transfer window was beginning to open, one of the things that was said was that Moyes is going to be looking for Premier League experience. He kind of said that, or someone said that on his behalf, etc. So I'm not going to be surprised, to be really honest with you, if we do bring a couple of players in who do have Premier League experience. I don't think that's a bad thing, but I think it's who we target. When we do start targeting 30-year-olds, etc., that kind of worries me. But if we're targeting the likes of Gallagher, etc., okay. Miss Smith, Mikey, 3 European qualifications. We are crap. The amount of lemmings is hilarious. If and when we get relegated again, you can support Arsenal. Calm it, Miss Smith. Calm it down, all of you. It's great to have the debate. That's what I like. But don't fall out. John. All the targets I've seen recently since Tim started seem to be Moyes boys, not Steidens. Good point. 9-0. Good evening to you. So many flans in a flat out panic over made up nonsense. I agree. Razor, Mikey, I noticed that looking at Moyes and I don't look too much. I noticed that looking at Moyes and I don't look too much as I get this feeling coming like when ICF were around, but he defines what his face tells you and it's not good. The conspiracy theorist in you. Early doors. Let's look at it this way. If we do poor in the transfer window market, then Moyes may only have a short period in charge. You know the saying, every cloud has a silver lining. Good evening, David. How are you? Not too fussed over who's in control, as long as we get a few decent players in and not just young for the future, or our future will be in the Championship. I like McTominay better than JWP, but yeah, good points. PCADs, do forgive me. You know I can't read every single comment, but I can sort of see them. The problem with having Declan money is that the price for the player you want just goes up 25%. You're not far wrong there. John, good evening to you. Please, younger players, our squad is old enough. I agree with that. I do agree with that. Hammerett. It's the age profile I'm talking about early. Surprised we haven't put a stupid bid in for Vardy. Oh, you've read my script then? No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. John, can we just sign someone? I know we're only 3 clubs in the Premier League that hasn't done any transfer business just yet, but I am hoping it's going to come pretty bloody soon, please. James, I agree. Got a good feeling about the coming season too. Just 2 or 3 top quality signings and the existing squad will be much improved. I think that too. You know, I actually do agree with that. I don't think we had the revolution last season in the transfer window where we had to bring in 8 players. We had that. We don't have a revolution. You know, there's no revolution required now in the transfer window. It's more of an evolution. I think you're right. 2, maybe even 3 good players might just be enough. So long as we don't lose that many players, 2 or 3 may just be what we need. John, so Maximum would improve us, but I don't trust Moyes to play him. Isn't he off? Apparently Newcastle are trying to sell him to a Saudi club in order to raise money. The irony, raise money to be able to buy players. Funky T, good evening to you, mate. I hope the rumours. I hope your week are rumours true about Ben Rama. That was no. There was, I think I did a show. I can't remember what I did it now. I did a show where I talked about 15 players on our 15 senior players were apparently rumoured to be linked to one club or another. 15 players, of which Ben Rahman was one of them. And I explained then, there's absolutely no way we're going to lose 15 players in one summer transfer window. If we were relegated, we wouldn't even lose that many players. But no, all those Ben Rama stories have kind of gone off the boil now. Peter, Rice will ball over and get sent off against us. Don't care. Ray, I really don't. I don't mean that in a him. I don't mean it like that. What I mean is I don't care what happens to him now, to be quite honest with you. He's not a West Ham player anymore, you know, and it's the end of it. I'm really trying to sort of steer away from all the Rice stuff because it can take you over. Evening, Ray. I hope you're well, mate. One day I'll let you know about the day I was invited to meet Eddie Chapman, chief exec at the Bowling Ground in 81, regarding my school economics report, a complete car crash. That'd be an interesting story, mate. Razor. Pigaz, absolutely right. A good owner would get players in while Rice deal was going on. Now, bigger money wanted for players and can't blame those other clubs. Sullivan good at porn, bad at football. Montana. If Moyes stayed the first time, Declan wouldn't have been the same player today. I feel for these young players. I don't think they will ever play under Moyes. You know, and I know people say that quite regularly, and I get that. I understand why people do say that. But as I keep repeating, you know, and this isn't a defense of Moyes, but it's just a fact, is apparently that the stat was that something like 97% of academy players in Premier League teams don't make it. They don't make it in the Premier League. You know, they may make careers. They may go down to the Championship or League One or League Two. But 97% of Premier League academy players do not make it in the Premier League. So it's not just Moyes. This isn't just Moyes. There's one I'm going to talk about, Harwood Bellis. You ain't going to get a look in at Man City as an example. And thank you guys for mentioning it to me in the show last week. Otherwise, I wouldn't have picked up on it, and I've read about him, etc. You've got some fantastic young players out there who just will probably never make it in the Premier League. They might come on through another route. Or they might have to drop a league or two and then come back up again. But that's a massive percentage, 97%. So I get what you're saying about, you know, they won't make it under Moyes. But unfortunately, a lot of them won't make it under most Premier League managers. John, I think Declan's going to Arsenal proves he would have stayed if we had shown ambition. Moyes was too slow and unambitious. If Declan wanted serious titles, he'd have gone to City. I think that's an interesting one. I've got a little bit about, Arsenal. I hate it. I did the research on it, but I had to look at it to get an understanding of it. And I'm going to talk a little bit about why I think he's gone to Arsenal. I think he's gone to Arsenal for more reasons than we think. Si, good evening to you. I hope we don't spend a fortune on that Fulham player. I agree with you there. I think he's an interesting target, but apparently we put in the £45 million bid, which has been turned down. We don't go any further than that, to be honest with you. I think it'd be silly to do so. Simon, good evening to you. You're going already. Thank you, mate. Thank you for watching and much appreciated. Good evening to you, Howard. How are you? I hope you're well, mate. Thank you for joining. Henry, how are you going to do a Europa League show for the upcoming? Are you going to do a Europa League show for the upcoming season? I promise I will, but I'm quite likely to be going to the games. But I'll do what I did last season. I'll record a thing just before. I might record something on the way there, and I'll certainly record something while I'm there. But absolutely, yes, I will definitely do it. Especially when we know what the draw. I'm going to do the draw when we're in the when they do the draw, the group stages and all that. I'll do all that and get involved in that as well. Early doors. We're so far behind in the transfers, it doesn't look good for us. We're going to get the old excuse again. We tried to get players, but they didn't. But I'm going to ask that question again. I'm being really, really serious. I know we'd like to see some fresh blood come in. That I don't deny. I think that's a good thing. I think we will get players in. But how many do we really honestly think we need? Look, let's put this in. When I ask this question, I ask it in perspective as well. Take your thoughts away from who currently plays in a particular position. I would like to replace Creswell. I love him, but I would like to replace him. I'd like to replace Ogbonna. I'd like to replace Antonio. But as it stands, they are currently part of the squad. So what would you buy? How many players do you think we really need? Because like I said a moment ago, if we get 3-4 at a push, I think that'll be it. Is that going to be enough for us? So I'm asking you guys the questions. I'd like to see what you guys say. PGADs. I feel bad for Antonio watching those Jamaica games. He couldn't get it going. With the greatest of respect to Antonio, it's finished for him, isn't it? The top level, playing internationals, it's been great for him. I've never deny any player to want to play for their country. Absolutely fantastic. But he's got to now focus on West Ham, hasn't he? If he wants to if he wants to have another season or two with us, he's got to put Jamaica to one side, hasn't he? Or do you think he's quite right to continue there? Hammers Mikey. Razor, I fear Arioli will leave maybe this winter if he doesn't become number one. I feel for him, so do I. I feel for him too. And I'm fingers crossed, I think he will become our number one this season. I just got a feeling that he will. Daniel, good evening to you, mate. Just don't see how giving Moyes this money to spend when there's only 12 months of his contract left. He will be buying for now, not the future, whereby Tim is the opposite. Nice segue. So I said I'm going to go into it. So why don't I go into the transfer part of the show? So at the beginning of the show, I said I was told a few things at the weekend, which kind of threw me a little bit, kind of made me go, what on earth is going on? And how much of this do I really take in? How much of it do I believe? And how much of it do I take with a pinch of salt, etc.? And then I sort of asked, what's the source? And I was told it was through an agent. Okay, it was through an agent. So how much of this do you believe? The person that, that told me? And he went, well, not much of it really. Some of it maybe, some of it I'm not so sure. And it's in 3 parts. So let's start, of course, with, a few weeks ago, we were all celebrating, weren't we? Tim Steidten came to the club, technical director, joined with an enviable list of players he recruited when he was at Werder Bremen and Bayer Leverkusen. And it was evident that we'd been caught in Steidten for quite some time. And it was a coup. It was a coup to actually get him because the likes of Liverpool, Spurs and Chelsea were all after his signature. We're all talking to him. We're all interested in having him as their technical director. And then, of course, that came soon after came the knowledge that we heard that Declan Rice had been tapped up for nearly a year by Arsenal to get his services. So we knew, we kind of knew anyway, but we knew that he was going. And when I thought, fantastic time for Steidten to come in. He's got a project. The first project, of course, is to replace Declan Rice. And, he'll be given £100 million, £105 million to hit the ground running, etc., etc. And I thought, well done, West Ham. At the time of appointing Steidten, I thought, finally, we're doing something in the right way. We're recruiting, we're bringing a technical director in. We're looking at the way we do our transfers. We're trying to get a strategy in place. With Declan Rice going, we've got Steiner's going to come in with his little black book of the players that he thinks he can promote to us and so on. And then, questions started to be asked, well, how's Steidten going to work alongside, David Moyes and, of course, Rob Newman, the head of scouting, etc. And then we were told, this story about, it's going to be done by committee. Players are going to be bought by committee. So Steiden's going to have an input, Moyes is going to have an input, Sullivan is, and so's Mark Noble. Really? I don't know how much of that any of you really believed. But, and then I asked the question, well, if that's the case, and I was told, well, there's a balance, isn't there? There's a weighting. Some people may have an input, but it doesn't necessarily mean that their input is going to be as high as someone else's. But I wasn't told whose input's going to be. The only thing I could decipher from that is Mark Noble's input is going to be quite minimal, because we were told he's going to learn off Steidten. So you kind of look at it and you look at the hierarchy and you go, there might be a discussion about player X maybe coming to West Ham, and Steidten may be going, or Moyes may be saying, this is the player I think we should have, etc. Have a conversation with Sullivan, have a conversation with the four of him, and Noble will be nodding his head, etc. So I thought, okay, out of the four, Mark Noble's probably not going to have much of a say as to who we sign. So it's going to then be between Moyes, Steidten, and Sullivan. And then I thought, well, who's got the hierarchy here? There's got to be someone. Now, I was told at the weekend that this is all about Moyes for the summer. Moyes is going to be the one deciding what players he wants, and then maybe throughout the winter, coming up to the winter transfer window, Steidten will have more of an input. So I asked the question, what is Steiden's role? Steidten, now we know, came from Bayer Leverkusen, and one of the things he wanted was more autonomy, more decision making. So the last thing he's going to do is come to West Ham United to have less decision making. And then the question was, well, okay, depending on Steiden's role, who are we going to have leaving the club after Declan Rice, and who else is going to leave? And we're hearing about stories of Paquetá, Scamacca, and all that sort of stuff, who may follow Rice out the door. And then who are we targeting, and who is making the who is looking at the targets? So all these things are like, what is going on? What is Steidten here to do? He might not have an awful lot of say who might be leaving, but certainly he's got to have a big say as to who we're targeting. I can't imagine that Steidten has come to West Ham United after saying that he wants more input in decision-making and then being told you've got to wait until winter. That doesn't make sense. So, look, I think he will have an influence over who comes in. And I think, we've been told that up until now, David Moyes will have veto as to who we sign. I've got a feeling that might actually be the other way around. It might be Steidten that have veto, because as someone's just pointed out, Steiden's here for the long term. David Moyes is only here for next season. So is he going to be given free rein to sign whoever we want or whoever he wants? I'm not so sure. And then there's the obvious thing of bringing a technical director in isn't just about transfers. It's also about the structure of the club. I've said this a few times before. It's about coaches, bringing in coaches, the style of play, the philosophy of our football, etc., etc. And ultimately, it's also about bringing in a new coach as well, because Moyes will not be given an extended contract. My God, he's got to go some to actually be given an extended contract. If we finish in the top four and win the Europa League and we're in Champions League, I might say he's got a chance of having his contract extended. But other than that, I doubt it very much. So there's that thing about Steidten. I'm going to come back to the Steidten thing in a minute, but there is that question mark: who's making the decisions? And I think it's not as cut and dried as it seems. But then you look at the players that we're being linked to, and you do start thinking that maybe Moyes has got more of a say than we realise. But let's focus for a minute on the players that are going to be leaving: Gianluca Scamacca, Lucas Paqueta, and as I mentioned before, Ben Johnson. They're the three players. There's been loads of links to other players, but they're the three that have been continuously linked to leaving the club. Now, let's start with Scamacca. Apparently, when he returns from Australia, he's going to sit down with his new agent, CAA, with the club and talk about a return to Italy. Look, it's nothing that we haven't already heard before, but despite there being interest from several Serie A clubs, the only interest is to loan him back out. He's already been told we're not loaning him out, and he's done the interview, especially the interview that Romano decided to put only a snippet of, talking about going back to Rome. He's talking about, that he's comfortable, he's back playing football. He was carrying an injury. Billy McKinley has confirmed that we won't be entertaining any interest in the player leaving, and that we're looking forward to working with him. And also, Roma have just signed, I think they're about to sign, have just signed, Atletico Madrid striker Alvaro Morata. So that's out the window. There are other clubs interested, like Juventus, etc. But he's got his heart set on Roma. But I dare say he'll be leaving next season, next summer, rather than this one. Lucas Paqueta, not only has he changed his agency in Brazil, but he's also got a new intermediary here in Britain as well. The intermediary has been approached by Newcastle, who say they're serious about signing the player. And I dare say playing Champions League will certainly be tempting. However, there are factors hindering that move. And that, but mainly, is financial fair play. They've got to sell players in order to get players in. That's the richest club in the world, who've got to sell players to get players in. But if he goes, 80 million, but he won't be going either. And then the third player I've mentioned is Ben Johnson. Now, apparently there's interest in Ben Johnson from Everton. And if there's any truth in any of the three rumours, I think that's the one that's more likely to happen. So Steidten not only has got to be looking at replacing Declan Rice, but he's also got to be looking at replacing any of these players that might leave. But as it stands, at the moment, it's just Ben Johnson that might be the only one leaving. And then that takes me to, these are the things that I've been told at the weekend, that Paqueta, there's interest in Newcastle, Scamacca is going to sit down with West Ham, etc. These are all the things I was told. Like I said, there's nothing new. You've all heard them anyway. They're out in the news anyway. And then it comes to the third bit, the third tranche, as to who we're targeting to replace all these players that are leaving. And of course, at the weekend, we heard about Maguire. He was the first name that came up. Apparently, we put in a loan offer for Maguire today, and it's been turned down. No sooner as we put the loan offer in, it's been turned down. We've lost interest. How true is all this? I don't know. Now, look, if Maguire is a real target, that's a Moyes signing. There is no shadow of a doubt. Bringing in a player like Maguire, etc., would be a Moyes signing. However, the one thing that we know about David Moyes is he doesn't favour loans. He's not that interested in loaning players. He prefers to buy them outright. So that's another thing that makes me think, how true was the story in the first place? I'm not so sure. I'm not so sure that we were really that interested in Maguire. We may have made an inquiry. We were told he's not on offer, and that was probably been it. We've heard Maguire doesn't want to leave Man United anyway. He's on nearly £200,000 a week. That's massive. There's no way we're going to pay him £200,000 a week to come and play for West Ham at the age of 30. But when you start looking at the money that we've got, £105 million, if we're going to start spending 30 or 40 million on Maguire, is that a good return on investment? I doubt it very much. Next, if we want to look at bringing a player in, look, the other thing is Maguire. We've got Zuma. If they're fit, Zuma and Agüerd start at the back. Now, there's a theory that maybe you bring Maguire in and play three at the back. Yeah, there is that possibility. But Moyes, is he likely to go with three at the back? Maybe sometimes. But I doubt very much he's going to want to spend 30 or 40 million pounds of the Declan Rice money to get a player like Maguire in. So if we want to be forward planning, we should be looking at the likes of Harwood Bellis. You know, a player that's 21 years of age is probably not going to get an awful lot of game time, if any game time, at Man City. Now, there's interest in him. There's interest from other clubs. Looking at maybe buying him and bringing him to their clubs. I think Fulham are interested. I think Forest have shown an interest. Newcastle, all credited with showing an interest. Now, look, why not come to somewhere like West Ham? He may not get a start in the first team on a regular basis, but I guarantee you he'll get games without a doubt. Europa League, you know, when we pick up injuries, you know that Zuma is going to be out injured. Now, that for me is a Steidten type of signing. You know, Maguire could be very much a David Moyes type of signing, a David Moyes signing for the here and now, for the final year of his contract, whereas Harwood Bellis could be for the here and definitely for the future, without a shadow of a doubt. You know, and I'm surprised. I'm surprised that Burnley aren't still linked, are not linked to him, given how he had such a fantastic season with them last season. Next up, James Ward-Prowse. Now, a bit like Maguire, you know, I think, look, I don't actually think Maguire would be a bad purchase, to be honest with you. I think he'll be pretty solid. He doesn't pick up that many injuries, etc. And I think he'll be okay, but not for 30 odd million pounds. That's the thing. Ward-Prowse, I know we're going to bid something like 20 million for him. And if we did get 20 million accepted, which I don't think we will, I think that wouldn't be a bad signing. A good experienced player. Okay, it ain't the most dynamic, most, wow player, but for a couple of seasons at the age of 28 coming in, yeah, for 20 million, 25 million even, wouldn't be such a bad thing. But again, that looks like a Moyes type of signing. And then, as I've said earlier, at the beginning of the show, it looks as if we are going for Gallagher. If that is true, then that's a much better spend of 25 million pounds, as far as I'm concerned. It's a player that's going to flourish. It's a player that can get better, a player that will be in a team that will be able to prove himself. But then there's another player that apparently Bournemouth are in for, which is, of course, Alex Scott. Another player that you could argue, well, why not bring someone like Alex Scott in instead of Ward-Prowse? I get the Ward-Prowse thing, just like I get the Maguire thing. Premier League experience, someone that can come in, could hit the ground running, etc. But it's not for the long term, is it? It's certainly for the short term. Whereas a player like Alex Scott, a player like Conor Gallagher, could be for the long term. A much, much different approach. And that would be a more Steidten-inspired signing. So you can see where this is going, can't you? And then we come to McTominay. Now, look, I know a lot of people don't like McTominay. I think he's all right. He's not the most dynamic of players, but I think he'll do a good job for us. And this is someone in between. This could be a Moyes type of signing. I can't imagine that Steidten would consider McTominay. But certainly someone that Moyes, I think, would think could get the best out of, without a shadow of a doubt. Someone that would fit in. Someone that would do a job for us. Someone that would be solid. Not fantastic. He's not going to be a Declan Rice replacement, but someone that would be solid. But then there's an argument about some of the other players that we're linked to. João Palhinha, apparently, like I said, apparently we've made a bid of 45 million pounds for him, which has been turned down. I don't think we offer any more than that, to be quite honest with you. I think we'll have our pants pulled down if we did. I mean, who'd want to sign a lot more than 40 million for a defensive midfielder, eh? I mean, it'd be silly, wouldn't it? I mean, I don't know any club in the Premier League that will want to do something like that, buying a defensive midfielder for over 40 million, like Arsenal having paid 105. But there you go. No, but seriously, look, when you compare Scott McTominay to the other links like Alvarez from Ajax and Palhinha, you kind of look at them and you go, yeah, he doesn't even stand up to these two. McTominay would be an uninspiring signing, but he'd be an okay signing. But for me, I get why we're in for Palhinha. 28 years of age, though, again, on the wrong side, but again, good Premier League experience, someone that'll be quite solid, and maybe you can see why we're after Palhinha. Alvarez, I think he's all right, but when you compare Palhinha to Alvarez, I think Palhinha kind of stands out, and he's proven himself in the Premier League as well. And then we've got, of course, Harvey Barnes. Now, we heard earlier today that we're no longer in the running for him. And I'm kind of not surprised because, as I said earlier, if we look at our current squad, we're kind of blessed with the kind of attacking players that Barnes would be competing against Benrahma and Cornet, etc., etc. Now, you could argue he could be better than Benrahma or Cornet and so on. But at the same time, our priority is not attacking wide players. We've got enough of them. I'd like Barnes, let's be honest. I think he'd be a decent player for us. He'd offer us a different dimension in attack. You know, he can play down the middle as well as out wide, you know, and allow players like Bowen to play down the middle, Benrahma to play more in the middle, and so on and so forth. But apparently we're not in the running for him now. And now he would be another Moyes type signing, ironically, you know, Premier League proven experience, etc., etc. So the verdict for me is that when you start trying to work out who's in charge, it's really, in some cases, it looks like it's difficult to work out because when you look at the players like Maguire, Ward-Prowse, etc., you'd argue they're David Moyes type of signings. But then when you look at the likes of Harwood, Bellis, Alex Scott, maybe even Gallagher himself, you'd say that would be more a Steidten type player, Steidten type of signing. And let's get back to Steidten because, you know, this is the interesting thing. And this is the theory that I've got that I mentioned a moment ago. Watch out for the players that we do eventually sign at West Ham United. It's fairly safe to say, like I said a moment ago, the tried and tested older players will be Moyes types. The younger players would be Steidten types. We heard at the beginning of the transfer window that after the mixed returns we've had from last summer's signings, Moyes wanted to shop in more familiar territory. He wanted to shop in the Premier League and get Premier League proven players. And I get that. But if we bring the younger players in, you know, who have a reputation to build, you know, I think this is where Steidten comes in. Then the likes of Harwood, Bellis, Alex Scott, etc., even Dennis Zakaria, who is injury prone, but is another player that would be a typical Steidten type of signing, I think would come in and could probably do quite well under the guidance of a technical director like Steidten. And I think going back to who has final say, I think, you know, it makes an awful lot more sense that it is Steidten than it is Moyes. So when we hear that Moyes has veto, I wonder really whether it's actually Steidten that's got veto over these players. The Maguire thing came like that. It came and went. All of a sudden, you know, we put in one inquiry, one bid in, and now it's dead. You know, and I think maybe the same might happen with Ward-Prowse if we put an offer in and that sort of dies down. I think it'd be again a Steidten type of no. That's not the sort of player you need. I think it's going to be quite interesting to see who does come in. If Gallagher is the start, and it's been rumored on Sky Sports in Germany, you've got to start thinking to yourself, maybe Steidten's got a bigger say than we currently realise. Right, that's all the news. So let's get back into your comments because I've been waffling. I felt like I've waffled and I do apologise because sometimes I get a bit excited when I talk. Realistic prediction, I think top 8 and at least a semi in a cup run, Jason. You'd be arrested for having a semi in a cup run, mate. Stupid joke. I'm sorry. Hammers Mikey. Fornals has to be starting week in, week out still. He's looking back to his best in my opinion. Absolutely. I think I've always said it. I think Fornals playing in the middle of the park is a much better footballer than playing out wide. Good evening to you, James. I hope you're well. Billy, good evening to you. Who would you sign for Rice replacement? I've just gone through them. You know, I don't mind actually Palhinha, to be quite honest with you. I think when I showed you that chart a moment ago, I think he seems to be, of the players that we've been linked to, he seems to be the best option. You know, 28 years of age, that's the bit I don't like. But and also the other bit I don't like is if Fulham start playing silly buggers and want 50, 60 million for him. If they really have turned down a 40, 45 million pound bid today, I think we don't go back. Now, who else comes in? I don't know. Quite honest with you. Scott McTominay, I would take him because it'd be all right. Uninspiring, but it'll be okay. Alvarez, I'm not so sure about. Apparently, people aren't waxing lyrical about Alvarez. I know people won't like McTominay, but I think he'll be solid. You know, he wouldn't be my first choice, but I think he'll be solid. Hamret, still 100% agree with you. Interest in the likes of Sladhead proved Moyes is only thinking right now. Absolutely. Simon, good evening to you. Gallagher was always played 7 out of 10 every game, never a poor one. Not saying he ever played a poor game, to be honest with you, but you know, I just think he he's not the only player that won us a trophy last season. I think an awful lot of other players, excuse me, have got to take some credit for how last season went as well. And let's not forget, last season wasn't great. So you take the credit for the good stuff. You also take the blame for the bad stuff, and he was part of that team. Si, Oggy for captain. I like Oggy, but again, another player I don't think will be playing regular football. John, thoughts on Moyes winning the Europa League and getting a new contract? I've just mentioned that, haven't I? I think the only way he's going to get a new contract is winning the Europa League and finishing in the top 4, and he might just get another year. Mark, Moyes looking for a captain, i.e. a player that will play every game, so can't announce him until he buys him. That's a good shout. Ward-Prowse. Look, I'm not against Ward-Prowse. I'm not against Maguire. I don't think it's necessarily the right way to spend the Declan Rice money. I don't think we'd be thanked for that if we did. If we spent 40 million on Maguire and another 25 million on Ward-Prowse, 65 million, more than half the money that we got from Declan Rice on a 28-year-old and a 30-year-old, I think that would be absolutely stupid, which is why I said we should be thinking ahead. We should be thinking about someone like Gallagher. We should be thinking about someone like Harwood Bellis. We should be thinking about someone like, even Alex Scott. Even if it's not those players, we should be thinking about those players who are like 23, 24, 25 max. That was the one thing that I was going to say about, Declan maybe going to Arsenal. I hated it. I did the stats. I looked at the Arsenal squad for next season. The average age of the Arsenal squad is something like 23 years of age, 22, 23 years of age. Our average age is 27. They've got 2 players or 3 players who are in their 30s, of which they're likely to be selling at least 2 of them. And everybody else is like, mid-20s, etc., etc. We've got, 7 players who are in their 30s, and not just in their 30s, but well into their 30s. And when I look at why Declan maybe and other reasons why Declan wanted to go to Arsenal, apart from being bloody well tapped up, is, he would have looked at that squad and he would have gone, look at this. This isn't just the squad for now. Now, I still don't think they're going to do that well. I think it's going to be years before they actually really, they might win an FA Cup, they might win a League Cup, etc. It's possible that they'll finish in the top 4 again. Do I think they'll win the league, or do I finish they'll win the Champions League? No, not for at least another maybe 3 or 4 years. And maybe that's what Declan Rice is banking on. I thought he wanted to win trophies now, but there you go. That's another matter. Yes, you're right. How did I get round to that? Yeah, I think maybe he is looking to buy a captain as well. James, I have a feeling Moyes will take Ward-Prowse or Maguire captain if they come. Well, you just said it yourself. There you go. Ward-Prowse maybe over Maguire. Maguire ain't coming. Stel, when are you going to do what is right and take over from Moyes? Mate, I talk shit. Honestly, Stu, I mean, I feel like I don't know if I've come across really well tonight. Sometimes you write a script and you write bullet points, etc., and you try and cover them all. And I think, I don't know if I've done it justice. I don't know. You tell me. I hope I've gotten the point of, the point was about who's in charge, Steidten or Moyes. I think it's more Steidten, and I think it will be proved by the players that we finally get through the door. I do think Moyes will get some of his own way. I think we will get someone like Ward-Prowse, and I think we'll get maybe, if we're going to get 4 players, I think maybe 2 of them will be for the here and now, and 2 of them will be for the future. That'll be a compromise. But I think that'll be Steidten saying that I've had an input here. If we got 4 players, if we got, let's say, for argument's sake, Maguire, Ward-Prowse, Palhinha at 28 years of age. Let's say we got those 3 players. I'd say that was definitely Moyes. Moyes has had the upper hand, and if he ended up spending the whole of Declan Rice money on a 28-year-olds and a 30-year-old, game over, I'm afraid. I think that would be a bad move, which is why I think Steidten has got more of a say than people think. So I hope I've got that across. I don't know. Winston, it's always good to be, it's always going to be a problem keeping Moyes. It's an interesting one. Good evening to you, Si. I hope you're well. Thank you, mate. I hope you're really well. James, Benny and Cornet aren't the answer to our left side still. I'm not saying that they are, but that's who's there at the moment. That's what I mean. So when I say to you, look, we've got players already in these positions. I'm not suggesting that I think they're the best players that we've got. I think we should have replaced Creswell a year or two ago. I think we should have been looking for a replacement for Ogbonna as well. I think we should be looking for a replacement for Antonio. Quite possibly. Maybe Benny. I like Benny. Maybe if we got Barnes in, you'd see Benny maybe playing more centrally. I think Cornet will be covering for Bowen this season, with Bowen playing more centrally as well. So I'm not suggesting that they're the best players we've got in those positions. What I'm saying is we've got cover. They are the players that we've got at the moment, and unless anyone is sold, that's who we're starting with. Trini. Kirkus went to Bournemouth for 14 million. Shows that even Bournemouth are ahead of us in their strategy. Good shout. Sai, I've heard Cornet has tripped over a toilet roll and out for the season. Howard, we need a born leader to come in. I'd loan to buy Masuaku. I think still from some Turkish side. Yeah, I know. I heard he's really good. I don't know why we haven't looked at him before. Huge. Good evening to you. Why would Moyes buy young, promising players when he is only here for a year? He's going to buy old players for now, won't be worth anything in 2 years, won't be worth anything in 2 years, but Moyes will be gone. And that's, again, why I think Steidten's got more of a say than people realise. There is no way that Sullivan has brought Steidten in. Like I said at the beginning of the show, we beat the likes of Liverpool. We beat the likes of Chelsea and Spurs to Steidten signing. Steidten wants to come in to make an impact. He wants to have a bigger say. He said that. He wasn't having the say he was accustomed to having at Bayer Leverkusen, which is why he left. And, so he's not going to come to West Ham United and then be told, you've got to sit there and just watch it all happen. Oh, and by the way, we're going to let David Moyes spend £100 million this summer, but don't worry about it, because you'll be able to get some players, with on scraps in the wintertime if we're having trouble. There's no way that's happening. There's no way, which is why I think he's got a bigger say than I think we realise. Lee, hi, Sterling West Ham family. Hit the like. Thank you very much. By the way, sorry, should have done it at the start of the show. If you're new to the channel, please hit the like, subscribe, and bell notification. It really helps the channel. Really much appreciated. If you've already done that, thank you so much. Hit the like button for this show. Billy, who would you sign this window? Just been through that. I want younger players. Let's be honest, I do. Look, I get the whole idea about having experience. I don't deny that. I don't think there's a problem with that. But let's not go and spend all the Declan Rice money on experienced players only, 28, 29, etc. One maybe, one, two at a push, at a real push. And even then I'd be like, well, but I'd rather, I do look with envy at the Arsenal squad and the average age being 24 or something like that, whatever it was I said, 23, 24. And I do think, why not us? We do need, we've been needing to replace several players in the squad for years, and so, James, like you said, certain players are not the answer, etc. I get that. But I want players that are going to come in. I like the likes of Gallagher. I appreciate what someone said earlier. What's he done? Not much this season. But I think, a player like that playing bit part in a massive squad in Chelsea isn't helping. You bring him to West Ham United, he's going to get regular game time. He's going to pick up his pace. He's going to get better and better and better. Harwood Bellis, chomping at the bit for wanting to play in the Premier League, and someone's going to snap him up. So why not us? Why don't we go for someone like Harwood Bellis? He knows he's going to be sitting behind a Gerdon Zuma before he gets his chance, but there will come times, and he's shown what a good player he is, winning the England, the Euro under-21 championship, etc., helping Burnley getting into the Premier League and so on. He's a decent player, so they're the sort of players that I want to bring in, but they're Steidten signings. And like someone said, I can't see David Moyes being given £100 million purse string and told, go ahead and spend the money the way you see fit. When it comes to this thing about, transfers by committee, that means Sullivan is going to be asking Steidten, what do you think? Moyes wants so-and-so. Steidten's going to have a say. He's going to go, you must be kidding, mate. 30 years of age, £40 million. No. Here's a player that's going to do just as well, 15 million, and he's 25 years of age. That's what I'm expecting Steidten to do. What I'm expecting Steidten to do is to go, I get why you want that player, but here's someone who's going to be just as good, cheaper, and younger. Daniela, look, Man United are so desperate to sell their deadwood, so maybe this is not coming from us. Good shout. You know, that's the thing I say. In the transfer window, you get an awful lot of stories. I think someone said, I think on Twitter, we've been linked to 95 players already this summer transfer window. I'm guarantee you 95% of those 95 players' stories are not true. You know, they're coming from somewhere, and usually where they come from is agents. Agents make money when they sell their players. If they don't sell their players, they don't get commission. You know, so of course we're linked to this player, that player, every player, you name it, we're linked to them. You know, it's not always true. Hammer it. I'm expecting a dismal window. Why would Moyes set up a decent side for for the next man in his seat? Moyes does deserve to start the season as manager, given the cup, but should not be in control of signings. I agree. Jason, good evening to you. Don't think it will be long before we're making our first signing. Fingers crossed it will come this week. And like I said at the start of the show, I know it completely threw me. And at the start of the show, I read that we are interested in Conor Gallagher. Apparently, we put in a bid, 25 million pounds, and apparently we're advanced negotiations. And that was from Sky. But Sky Germany. But as someone said, maybe Steidten's given that story to Sky Germany. I can't corroborate it because I literally read it and then I had to go online. So as I said, if anyone else has read it, do let me know if you've seen the same story. Miss Smith, I like Barnes, a class defensive midfielder and an amazing young left back. I like Barnes. I'd like a class defensive midfielder as well. And I don't think we're getting an amazing young left back this summer, unfortunately. Huge. Razor, even if Moyes only lasted 2 months, it'll be too late. The new manager will have old, slow players and no money to spend, which is why I really don't think Moyes is in control of the purse strings on his own. I really, really would be surprised. Carl, good evening to you. TS needs to pull a rabbit out of the hat. Can't be offering 50 million for Palhinha. Exactly. That's not a Steidten type of book signing. There's no way that someone like Steidten will go, this is the best use of your money. I can't see it. I don't understand it. I'd be very, very surprised. Daniel, we have to buy English players for our European quota. We do. That's very true. But we do still... I don't know how many. I said it in last week's show. I think we need maybe 3. I could be wrong. And maybe that's why maybe Gallagher could be the reason why we're going for someone like him. Henry, have to forget Rice. We support the club, not the player. Totally agree. Jack, good evening to you, mate. I hope you're well. Need some Grecian 2000 for that bit. No, stop that, mate. I like it. I like it going grey. I want to go all grey, you know, but it's not happening. As long as I don't lose it, I don't care. Schmiegel, I'm worried about the new season. We have an aging squad full of players with no sell-on value. There seems to be no long-term plan, only short-term fixes, which is another reason why I think Steidten's got a bigger say in what happens this summer than we're led to believe. Lee, I don't want players who are coming for the money. Absolutely. Get hungry players like Dawson, not worried if he puts his body on and attacking his headers and his low cost. Good shout. Adam, thank you so much. Really appreciated. Don't know about you, but all the names linked before Steidten was announced really makes me worry. Goretzka would be amazing. Mate, I really hope you've enjoyed what you've heard so far. Really appreciate the money. Absolutely fantastic. Thank you so much. And I hope what you've heard has made you subscribe. Hammer it. I really hope, and good shout, by the way, on Goretzka. Really hope Scarfish Steidten has some balls and demands Moyes give some youth a try. I don't think he'll be able to demand who plays. He can certainly, you know, look at bringing players in, but unfortunately, as it stands, he's not got a lot of say as to who picks the team, unfortunately. Trini, that stats has more to do with money than not being good enough. Too many managers cannot build a team and are used to buying one. Yeah, true. But that's what Steidten's for. Funky T. Our squad is now full of international players. We have some quality players that have now had the Premier League experience, feeling positive. And this is it. I said it a moment ago. You know, last summer was revolution. We had no choice. We had to bring in 8 players. We had to go out there and get 8 players in. It would have been wonderful if we had Steidten last summer. But anyway, it is what it is. We needed 8 players. So we've done the revolution. Now it's tweaking. Now the evolution is here. Now it's the tweak. one player leaves, one player comes in. One player leaves, one player comes in. I think up to 4 players, and that'll be it. But I'll go back to what I said earlier. Paquetá, he ain't going anywhere. Scamacca, he ain't going anywhere. Then these players are not going anywhere this summer. They will probably both leave next summer. That I'm expecting, but this summer, I think they're here. They're here for this season. Scamacca, he said, I've got a point to prove, etc., etc. If I go back to Italy, it's not because I failed in England and so on and so forth, and he said, I play with an injury, looking forward to this season. Yes, I like to go back to Roma. It's where I'm born, raised, etc., etc. But I think that will happen next summer. Paquetá, the same thing. I don't think so we won't have to worry about having to lose not only Declan Rice, but then losing Paquetá and losing Scamacca as well. If we lose players, it'll be more like, I don't want to call them fringe players, but it will be, like I said, Ben Johnson has been linked to Everton. It's quite likely that deal might happen. If Johnson leaves, that means we've got to replace Lanzini, got to replace Rice, and we've got to replace Johnson as it stands. I get what you said, James. Certain players aren't, good enough. I get that. But unless they're sold, they're going to be here for next season, which means for now, we don't have to buy a replacement. Jonathan, evening to you. I agree regarding Rice. I've moved on. It's all now about what we do with keep building. We had Payet and Artovich, Rio, Cole, Johnson, and many more that came and went, and Parker. Yeah, see, I don't want us to be thought of as a one-man team anymore. I just don't, and I don't think we are. I think we should be able to survive this. And I think, and that's the other thing about Steidten coming in. Steidten coming in is going to bring players in who are going to be built up, and then other teams are going to be looking at them and going, I like that player, that West Ham player. Look what happens with Brighton. I said this in last week's show. Brighton will bring a player in. He'll play well for a season or two, and then off he goes. 50 million, 40 million, 60 million, etc. Brighton don't shit themselves and go, oh my God, the end of the world. They go, no problem at all. Next. And in comes another player that's going to be as good as, if not better than the last player. Can we do that with Rice? Why not? Why not? Freddie Potts. I've got a lot of faith in Freddie Potts. I was asked last week, who do you think might come through the under-21s? And I couldn't for the life of me think of any other than Mbama. But then Potts popped up. And I thought, shit, I've completely forgot about Potts. He could be a player that could be for the long term. Signed a 3-year deal, like I said the other day. He's got a 3-year extension. And why not? Why not someone else coming through the ranks? Someone like Freddie Potts. And then, of course, like I said last week as well, we've got all these under-18s who are now going to go into the under-21 squad, and they're going to develop even further. And then at the end of, or throughout the season, you're going to start thinking, I've heard more about George Earthy. I've heard more about Ollie Scarles. I've heard more about Kadua, etc., etc. Now they're playing in the under-21s. And if they're doing it, if they're smashing it the same way as they smashed it for the under-18s, then you start to get excited because there may be more players coming through once they've proved themselves. Schmeigel, I'm glad that Fulham are playing hardball over Palhinha. Hopefully we'll look at other targets instead, as I think there's better players out there. I think there are some good players out there. I think we're going to have to pay a heavy price. Do I want to pay 40 million for Palhinha? Well, they've turned it down. I'd walk away now. I wouldn't offer them any more money, to be quite honest with you. Aaron, can see why Moyes is scared of playing with the youth. Look what happened, Saville, when he... Henry. Yeah, but some of the academy players Moyes has dismissed genuinely were good enough. Ashby was. The irony with Ashby, and the story that I've told you before, is that he was offered a contract to stay. He was offered an extended contract to stay. He was told that, what hindered Ashby? Here's the irony. What hindered Ashby more than anything else was his injuries. Ironically, when he was just about to break through, he got injured. When he broke through the first time, he got injured. And then he came back and started playing again, and he was breaking through again. He got injured again. He's had quite a few injuries, and I think if it had stayed, he was offered a contract to stay. He turned it down. He wanted to move on. He thought it was going to be a lot better when he go into Newcastle, etc. And unfortunately, look what happens there. A younger manager, a more dynamic manager, even that younger dynamic manager at Newcastle hasn't used him. Look at the other lad that went to Leeds United. Who thought he was going to get. He played what, 2 games, and scored 1 goal. I've forgotten his name already. But he came in. He decided to leave because he thought the grass is going to be greener. And now look what's happened. He's now in a championship team. So it doesn't always equate that. You go to another team as a youngster and think it's going to be better for you. No, it hasn't, So the irony, the absolute irony, I agree with you, Henry. I think Ashby is good enough, and the irony is if he'd stayed with us, he'd be fighting for a first team place this season. I'm pretty much convinced by that. Jack, all talking about transfers. I think we should definitely bring in the youngsters worth a punt. Just talked about them, and there aren't that many at this moment transitioning from the under 21 squad that could come into the first team. Mbama is one, but he kind of almost leapfrogged, from the under 18s almost straight into the first team, which is why I still don't know yet. He might be sent out on loan. Let's see what happens. Ollie Scarles, do you remember Ollie Scarles? When he played and everyone was raving about him, there are better players than him. Kadua, captain of the under 18s, is a fantastic player. All right, different position, I know. But George Earthy, another fantastic young prospect. Freddie Potts, etc. But a lot of them have come directly from the under 18s. Potts could be the next one. Potts could be over this season, along with Mbama, could be the next 2 youngsters that might just get a bit more of a C in the senior team. Early doors. Still, I think we need 3 or 4 players, 5 at a push if we can afford it. If we only, yes, I don't disagree, but only if we're going to move players on. I don't think we're going to be looking at a lot of business, to be honest with you. Jason, what's this about the guy from Bayern? Don't know. News to me. So you're going to have to give me a bit more information, I'm afraid. Philip, at a rate of 97% of academy players only making it into the Premier League, that makes at the most 2 players per team. Makes you think, doesn't it? And we've had our 2 players, Ben Johnson and Declan Rice. How far behind am I? That's quite far behind. So do forgive me. I'm going to have to jump a few comments if you don't mind. Do forgive me. Mr. Williams, you're meant to be out in Florida. Good evening, Stel from sweaty Florida. I hope you can give us some positive transfer news soon. I'm afraid not, mate. I hope you're enjoying yourself. Really envious. I hope you're enjoying yourself out there. Ben, bored of this season already. Very close to logging out until first game. Don't do that. Subscribe before you go. I'm only kidding, Ben. We need 3 players, centre back, left wing, and centre mid. Centre back, I agree, as cover. Centre mid, without a shadow of a doubt. I'm not so sure about left wing, unless we, like I said again, unless we sell someone. Let's scroll down. Do forgive me. I'm going to have to jump to try and sort of catch up. Early doors. I think all we want to see is the club spend that rice money wisely with some decent signings that can fill in the gaps we're missing. As long as that happens, it will ease the fear slightly. Totally agree. Absolutely, totally agree with you. I think we've got to spend the money wisely. And that goes back to, again, my point about Steidten. David Sullivan has thought to himself, look, Sullivan, as the story goes, and I'm sure you all know, Sullivan apparently was really unhappy with the money that we spent last summer, £165 million. He thought a lot of it was kind of wasted. Now, I think a lot of it was kind of proven. We stayed in the Premier League and we won the Europa Conference League. So I think, we kind of made our money back in some ways in what we spent. And the reason why Steidten's come in is to help oversee how we spend our money, which is why I don't think Moyes has got a blank check. All of a sudden, all this stuff about Steidten not being involved in transfers, etc., just absolutely doesn't make any sense whatsoever. So I think you're right. I think it's important to spend the rice money wisely. And I think Steidten is one of the guardians of doing that. Sullivan's going to go to Steidten. David wants player Maguire. Steiden's going to go, no. And then Sullivan will go, we're not buying him. Let's see if we can loan him. If we loan him, that might be all right. We've asked to loan him. No, move on. Palhinha. David wants Palhinha. Steidten, I'm not so sure. 28 years of age, 40 million. Don't know. Well, we'll bid for him. Bid for him. Answer no, Steidten. That's it. Move on. I'll find you a player that can play that position a lot cheaper and a lot younger. I really do think Steidten is there to make those important decisions to help Sullivan understand how best to spend that money. Trini, let's have it right. Moyes should have no say in players we buy, and Sullivan needs to back Steidten. Just said the same thing. Miss Smith, Chinese whispers circle jerk fueled by sun readers and white lightning merchants. Wow. Hammerette, the links to Emil Home were a good read, but why are we linked to right backs and left wingers? Surely there are two positions we don't really need to focus on this season. If we sell Ben Johnson as primarily a right back, then I'm back. If we sell Ben Johnson, then I kind of totally understand why we might be linked to a right back. Otherwise, I agree with you. Left wingers, well, I said already, Cornet, Benrahma. I don't think we need, and I know Cornet. I'm really hoping that Cornet has a really good season this season. He might come good for us. Fingers crossed. I hope he does. And then, yeah, I agree. Then if he comes good, then why do we need to get another winger? Absolutely agree. Let's scroll down. Fo, good evening to you. I hope you're well. Giving Moyes carte blanche in the transfer market is a recipe for disaster, especially in his final year. Honestly speaking, Moyes should have been bitten the bullet and moved on with his head held high. I know a lot of people say the same thing. I don't disagree with that. John, Matt, if I remember rightly, the under-18s played the same formation as the first team, but they played so much better. You know, I don't know. I think they did. I think they played a 4-2-3-1. I'll make you right. Absolutely. Miss Smith, 2 points off Champions League, two top 7 finishes, 3 Euro qualifications, first European Cup in decades, and still the bleating is deafening. It's a Muppet fest. No one's scared to you. I think you and what's his name should get into a room together and just talk it out. Anthony. Talking about backroom staff, Irving didn't leave. He has been given a new 1-year contract. Well, actually, that is true. Excuse me. He's still a scout. He still does some sort of scouting stuff up north. Yeah, I agree. He has been given an extension. Trini, we can't waste money on other, but he isn't the day to day, like he was when he was, alongside Moyes in the dugout, etc., etc. Trini, we can't waste money on other teams' cast-offs. Surely we've moved on from that. I agree. I think surely we have. And I think it'll be proof. Like I said, it'll be proof in who we actually finally sign. So I take Maguire on loan with Manure paying 80% of his wages. No way on a permanent basis. That's what we offered. Turned us down. Let's move on, to be quite honest with you. I would have taken him. See, again, Maguire on loan. Yes. No problem with that. Let's not spend 30-40 million pounds on a 30-year-old defender. Maguire on loan, yes. Ward-Prowse, we're getting for 20 million, which we won't. Maybe 25 at most. 25 at a push, but I wouldn't go much further than that. I get it. I understand it. It's not necessarily the signing I want, but I get it and I understand it. Now, if we got Ward-Prowse in and then we got Gallagher alongside him, and then a young central defender who's going to be cover for the likes of Zuma and Agerd, all of a sudden I'd be going, that ain't bad, not bad, and then it'll be like, who do we get, to cover for the old Rice role, a central defensive midfielder? We spend 35 million, 40 million on a central, which is what it's beginning to look like. Again, depending on the age of that player, will be a massive factor as to whether we sign him or not. Jonathan Tah would be brilliant. Talked about Tah quite a few times before. Nothing more has materialised from that. In fact, nothing more has materialised with any of the signings. The latest one, as I said, is Conor Gallagher, which was announced tonight. Palhinha, which we put a bid in. Maguire, which we put in a loan bid and got refused. That's about it at the moment. John, I believe Steve Round is very close to Moyes and worked with him at Everton. Moyes needs all the friends he can get. Him and Irving coming in would be good for Moyes. Don't think Irving's coming back. I think Irving's happy doing what he does on a part-time basis. But Steve Round, he's left Arsenal now, I think. and there's there's a possibility that Round could come and work for him again at West Ham. Not bad. Mark Watson, could we look for central centre-back cover in January? We could look for centre-back cover in January if required. Good shout. Midfield has to be our priority this window. And remember, we only have 33 million of the Moyes money at the moment, and financial fair play will restrict our spend. Yeah, but they'll see that we've got the 100 million in the bank or to come, which kind of gives us a little bit more credit in order to be able to buy more players now. So it ain't just a kitty of 33 mil, but it's a good point. And it's also another good point, if this story about, Steidten won't be getting more involved until the winter, it could be that we'll only get maybe one player to replace Declan Rice now, and maybe our other business will happen in January. Could be, but I'm not so sure. Spot on, Trini. What's the point of signing overpriced cast-offs? We need to find gems from home and abroad and nurture them in a progressive team, not Moyes ball. Absolutely agree. I don't disagree with that. I'm scrolling down, trying to catch up because I know I'm still half an hour behind you guys. Schmeigel, we lack pace in our team. I'd love Moussa Diaby here, seeing as Steidten knows him, but Villa are pushing hard for his signature. Yeah. James, good evening to you. Scott McTominay is way better than those two. Excuse me. He would be a great buy. He's very good. He's as good as Rice. Big buy. I'd watch him a lot. Way better than Gallagher. There are different players, aren't they? Gallagher is an attacking midfielder, whereas McTominay is a defensive midfielder. As I said earlier, I don't think he'll be a bad buy. For 25 million, he's 26 years of age. He's a Scottish international. He wouldn't be the worst signing in the world. Premier League experience as well. We get someone like him in, someone like Gallagher in, I've already said. A young centre-back as cover. Maybe won't look so bad, will it? Mark, Steidten may have insisted on a one-year loan deal only for the geriatrics. Good shout. That's quite possible as well. Hammeret, it really does not matter who we get in what position. After the bedding-in period, they'll be shoved into a new position anyway. Dear, oh dear, Hammeret. Never heard you be so cynical. Good evening, Dan. I hope you're well. It's obviously all rumour, but very uninspiring by some of the links. Moyes' obsession with old Premier League proven players will cost the club in the long run. Steidten needs to be allowed to do what he is paid to do. Absolutely agree. Montana. Get me Edson Alvarez. His stats look impressive. Put a bid in for him to play as defensive midfield and as a centre-back as well. Ed, Mr. Bonk, I love our cup win, but you'd be hard put to argue that couldn't have been achieved without Moyes. Let's see what happens this season. I'm hopeful. Good evening to you, Ken. I hope you're well, mate. Still, Antonio on his way to Gerard's Saudi team. No, I look, unless someone's got an update, I've been told that that's absolute tosh. It's a load of rubbish. I've been told there's no bid in. Shame, to be honest. I would have liked for him to go. Thank you, everything that you've done, Antonio, etc., etc. He wants a big payoff. That would be a big payoff. Dan, the price Fulham want for Palhinha, you can get, for example, Fofana and Sangare and still have change. Both are younger, seasoned pros. Players do exist outside the Premier League. Spot on. And I'm hoping that will be a Steidten-type influence to say, as I said a moment ago, we put in 40 million for Palhinha. They've said no. Let's move on. Let's get you a better player, a younger player, and a cheaper player. Jason, that young Arsenal squad bottled it, and at the crucial moment of the season, balance is most important for me. And yeah, we do need some youth blooded in, hopefully 3 from the academy. I think we'll be pushing it with 3, mate. I'd love it, but I don't think we'll get 3. I think we'll get, depending on what happens with Mbama, I think Mbama will come in. Will we get anyone else? I think Freddie Potts will be on the periphery. Anyone else? You might see the odd appearance from 1 or 2 other players in the non-important games. But depending on what happens with Mbama, if he goes out on loan, he goes out on loan. Not a bad thing for him. But if he stays, then he'll be the only one really that I think might sort of break through this season. Who is this Cornet chap you speak of? He's our new signing. He'll be like a new signing. Wait and see. Chris, good evening to you. I hope you're well, mate. Hopefully we won't look back this summer like we did last January, a couple of seasons ago, finishing a couple of points off the Champions League. This was the time to make wholesale changes, including Moyes. Good shout. I said it myself. You took the words out of my mouth, mate. That January transfer window a couple of years ago was a changing moment in that season, wasn't it? We only had to sign one player. could have just signed a new tea lady just to bring in a bit of fresh blood, Jonathan, am I the only one who could not care less if Antonio does not show up, sold or whatever, as long as he's not in the team? I think a lot of you are thinking the same thing, to be quite honest with you. I totally admire what he's done for us. But if we go out next season relying on Antonio to lead the line, that would be worrying. Lee, still, you do a great job. Thank you very much, mate. Plus, there will always be things you wished you could have said better. Thank you. I appreciate that. Dan, Steidten is here for the next manager, in my opinion. Absolutely. I think Steidten will be looking for a new manager if he hasn't already started so. As someone said, Xabi Alonso. It wouldn't surprise me at all. Alonso is in his last year of his contract at Bayer Leverkusen. Who's to say it won't happen? Jonathan, I'm speaking with Steidten at the moment about a business venture. No news of note, as it's not come up about buying players or Moyes. But what I'm saying is he is in control. Is that really? Is that true? You wouldn't be lying, would you? So, yeah. Oh, I'm gonna have to message you, Daniela. Stell could be really looking at the youth players to replace some of the older players in a year or two's time. Yes, I think so. Like I said about the under-18s who come through, you're going to get a large chunk of those under-18s are now going to be playing in the under-21s. If they smash it in the under-21s, start looking at some names, that could start breaking through into the first team, not next season, but the season after. It's up to 117 players now, is it, that we've been linked to? Unbelievable. Yeah. And the trouble is, as I said earlier in the show, we all get taken in by it and we all believe it. And then, we're linked to player X, we're linked to Alex Scott, and Alex Scott has had a meeting with David Moyes and David Moyes has put him off signing for us. And we've lost Alex Scott to Bournemouth. Maybe we were never linked to Alex Scott in the first place, but we kind of we want to believe a lot of the stories. There's a lot of stories that we don't want to believe in, but, we shouldn't get carried away by it. Anthony, I hope, Stell, when you're back on, nobody talks about, who moved to the Gooners. I'm trying to do my ultimate best not to talk about that bloke. So I take Gallagher for 25 million. That sounds like a bargain. However, sounds incredibly cheap for an England international. But he's not, as some people have said earlier in the show, he's not really done it in the season that's just gone, has it? Went off the ball a bit. But I think I'd like him. Or add him, Sangare, as an example. All of a sudden, you start to salivate. You start thinking, these aren't bad players, young players, without a shadow of a doubt. Let's scroll down. Jonathan, Goretzka is 38, but he's 20. Goretzka is great, but he's 28, so can't say yeah to him. Then say Palhinha is too old. Fair play. That's fair play. Jackie, do we really underbid with all players? No. Let's not forget what happened with Arsenal. Arsenal came in with their first bid at 60 million for Declan Rice, and then they went up to 75 million. And then when they shit themselves thinking that Man City were going to steal the player from under their noses, they offered what we wanted. So we're not the only ones. Everyone does it. Peter, good evening to you, mate. What about a cheeky bid for Tierney from the arse? Yeah. Or someone said last week, Rowe, what's his name? Forgotten his name, Rowe. There might have one or two players that might not be too bad. I don't know. I don't want to deal with Arsenal ever again, to be quite honest with you. Jason, with Tim arriving, the extra pressure on Moyes to be more progressive and youthful will be a plus. That will unlock Moyes' unfulfilled potential. We're going to be a phenomenon. My glass is empty. I'm drunk. Chris, we should have definitely took a player as part of the Rice deal, Nketiah or Smith Rowe. There you go. Smith Rowe. Yeah, I would have had either of them, to be quite honest with you. Conan, good evening to you. I recall Steidten from my years living in Bremen. Well respected and canny. He didn't come to West Ham to play second fiddle. He'll make us serious contenders in the transfer market, not Keystone Cops. This is it. This is why when I was told this story, I started the whole show when I said I was told three things at the weekend, which kind of threw me a little bit. And just to recap, one of them was apparently Steidten is not involved in transfers. I thought, no way. There's no way. Then about Skamaka and Paquetá leaving, and I went, no way. And then the links to Maguire, etc. And we've seen how the links have panned out, And like I said tonight, there's a story that we're in for Gallagher. Let's see if that's true or not. Palhinha, we made a bid, apparently got turned down. Let's move on from him. Made a loan bid for Maguire, got turned down. Let's move on from him. And apparently we're not interested in Harvey Barnes. Did I mention that earlier? I might have done. Apparently we've got other priorities. And I think absolutely at this moment in time, I think we do have other priorities. We've got to sort out our central midfield. We've got to get the right midfielders in, without a doubt. They've got to be the priority because at the moment they are the biggest call because we've lost 2 players in those spots. We've lost Lanzini and we've lost Declan Rice. So we've got to get 2 players in to replace those 2. For me, the only other player at the moment, the only other position at the moment for me is a younger cover for central defence. Maguire ain't that, So those would be 3 positions: a defensive midfielder for me, a central defender, and an attacking midfielder. Those are the 3 positions for me that I think have got to be our priorities. I like Barnes, but at the moment he's not the priority. Anthony, still, I believe that that's why Bayer Leverkusen was added to our fixture list. Steidten had a word with Alonso about watching us and make a decision which his contract ends and joins West Ham. Good shout. That could well be a reason. I think there is a reason linked to Steidten why we're playing Bayer Leverkusen. It seemed to have been slotted in at the last minute. And Ngakia as well. Thank you for reminding me. And Ngakia, there's been a whole host of young players who've decided to leave West Ham United, think that the grass is greener. And Ngakia, Ashby, I've still forgotten the guy's name who now plays for Leeds up front, who actually Mbama, and I said this, forget about him. Mbama's a better striker, and it's going to be proved that Mbama is indeed a better striker. What the bloody hell's his name? Someone tell me his name. Anyway, Schmeigel, I heard it. If you get on the wrong side of Steidten, he will come for you with that big scarf and he will choke you with it. Jason, Moyes said Potts will likely go out on loan for at least part of the season. Great. I think that'll be great. I think that'll be a good development for him, and see what happens then. Hammerett, do you think given a decent run, Downs will be of standard to be in the first team regularly, or do you think he's a liability? I like Downs. Now, there's rumour, the rumour is still linking him to Southampton. And I get it because the Southampton manager is Downs' ex-manager, Russell Martin, I think his name is, who used to manage him at Swansea. He's now moved to Southampton and he talks highly of Downs. Downs had a fantastic season under Martin for playing for Swansea. Wasn't he the highest pass success rate, in the championship when Downs was there? I like Downs. I think Downs will get better. Is he a Declan Rice replacement? No, admittedly, I don't think he is. I think he's a little bit lightweight, but I think he certainly is a good squad player. But it depends on what we want. Do we want a good squad player, or do we want to bring in a player that's going to be a first team, someone that's going to really push the team forward? Now, can he do that? I think maybe in time, he probably can. Is he that now? Probably not. Sean, good evening to you. I think he's a cracking squad player, happy, younger version of Noble, coming on steady. There you go. Answer that for me. Let's scroll down. Good evening to you, Scott. I hope you're well. In regards to Steidten, we can only hope you're right. I've got to be. As other people have said, Conan has said it himself. This man has not come to West Ham United to play second fiddle. He's not come to West Ham United to see £100 million being spent by a manager who's only there for one more year. It doesn't make sense. It just doesn't ring true. It doesn't sit right. It seems a little bit odd, that you would do that. Why even bother to bring Steidten in if he's not going to have some say? I think he's got a bigger say than we realise. I think he will help Sullivan veto certain Moyes targets. I think he will. And someone said it. Maybe that's why we put in a loan bid for Maguire rather than going out to buy him. It's quite possible because Moyes doesn't like loans. He doesn't. He doesn't like loaning players. He's not interested in that. So maybe Moyes this might be a Steidten move. Maybe Moyes wanted to buy Maguire for 35, 40 million pounds. And the compromise was, let's ask to loan him to West Ham for a season. And when we asked that, we were told no. End of story. Move on. Sean, still, is the ladies team still after Guendouzi? Jason, I don't know. Jason, I expect Tim will give the pros and cons of each player, including sell-on value. Then it's up to the owners. Yeah, but he's doing his job if that's the case. Chris, for 20 million, Tyler Adams from Leeds, a no-brainer. Not a bad player, not a bad little player. Yes, for 20 million, probably. Yeah. Lee, thanks, my West Ham fan. Great show. Thank you, mate. Much appreciated. For most of the comments. Really appreciate it, mate. Always appreciate your support. Scott, Earthy looked absolute class the other day. He's a bit slight, but skill-wise, he was as good as anyone on the pitch. One to watch for the future for sure. Absolutely, 100% agree. I totally agree with you. George Earthy is going to be a name to be talking about within the next season or so. John, the mouth going and none of us hearing was the most lucid thing still said all night. I know it went quiet for a few seconds. Scarborough, good evening to you. Florian Plettenberg has linked us to Conor Gallagher for 35 million who wants to move. There you go. Thank fuck, someone else has said it. I said 25 million. So I don't know where I got that from. But 35 million and he wants to move. Thank God someone else has said it. I started the show, Scarborough, just before I went online. Sorry for repeating myself. Just before I went online, I was reading stuff, have I caught up, blah, blah, blah. Conor Gallagher linked to West Ham United. I didn't get the price. I thought it was 25 million for some reason. There you go. And that's why I changed the thumbnail. I had to put Conor Gallagher. If you look at the thumbnail, it looks shit. I just shoved Conor Gallagher in there amongst the other players I had in the first place. Thank you for repeating it because I thought I was beginning to lose my mind. Sean, Gallagher all day long can play defensive midfield, central midfield, and attacking midfield. Not sure that Gallagher will fit in with Souček and Pac-Man. Gallagher could replace Fornals, who could go to Real Betis under Pellegrini, who originally signed him for West Ham United. It's possible. I did say earlier on that what it looks like this summer will be one out, one in, one out, one in. Now, Gallagher won't necessarily be a replacement for Declan Rice role. Maybe a replacement more for the Lanzini role, actually. So let me take that back about Fornals for now. So we'll still get, if we get Gallagher in, I'd love Gallagher to come. There's the sort of player that we need. It's a sort of player, right age, ambitious, wants to move on, wants to make a proper name for himself, wants to get regular first team football, etc. He'd be an ideal signing for us, without a shadow of a doubt. Thank you for repeating it, Scarborough, because I was beginning to lose my mind. No one else was corroborating it, and I thought maybe I just made that up. Funky T. If you were going to be managing someone, I would guess you'd have to say in whether you employ them or not. I guess you would have a say in whether you employ them or not. So I think it would be odd if Moyes didn't have a say in our signings. I'm not saying Moyes doesn't have a say in our signings, but what has been alluded to me, what was told to me at the weekend, is that it was Moyes making the decisions with Sullivan. And I went, what about Steidten? No, apparently he won't get involved. Absolute bullshit. So for me, I think it's the other way around. I think Steidten will have a big say in who we sign. John, what about Milenkovic? I was watching the Prague final again. We were linked to him when we were linked to Zuma. If you remember the transfer stories at the time, 1 minute we were signing Milenkovic, next minute it was Zuma, back to Milenkovic, back to Zuma, it kept going like that. I like him. I'd like to sign him. I think he's a very decent defender. Good evening, Joan. I hope you're well. Maguire will be Lingard Mark II without the talent. He does not want to leave United. Yeah, he doesn't. Would you? 200 grand a week? Scott. Oh, it sucks he left us. But Arsenal, with who he shall not be named, will win things this year. They might win the FA Cup. Miss Smith, I'm raising a glass for Peach. He hasn't been mentioned for a long, long time. He would have loved that night 5 weeks ago. I'm just too old for all the negativity. Great show. Love you too, Miss Smith. Thank you for getting involved and raising the glass for Peach. Love that. Peach is an old friend. He used to do a show. Whoever remembers him, mad as a box of March hares. Box of March hares. Mad as a box of frogs. But lovely bloke. Trini, we might need to look at centre-back cover before January, as a Gerd will be at good shout. A Gerd will be at AFCON. A few others. Ben Rama will be there as well. Very good point. Scott, McTominay in mid would actually work very well in our side. Yeah, I wouldn't. Look, like I said a moment ago, if we got Scott McTominay and we got Gallagher, combination 60 million for a 26-year-old and a 23-year-old, I'd be like, that ain't bad. That ain't bad. McTominay, proper defensive midfielder, will do a proper defensive midfielder's job, and then have in front of him Paquetá, Fornals, Souček, Gallagher, etc. That's not bad. I wouldn't mind that. And I just wonder if now that the Gallagher story's come out, I wonder that's maybe why we've withdrawn our interest in Harvey Barnes. We would have had to spend 35 million on Harvey Barnes. Thank you for correcting me, Scarborough, that it's a 35 million bid for Gallagher, not 25 million. That starts to make sense to me. That starts to make an awful lot of sense. Get Scott McTominay in and get Conor Gallagher in. Combined total of about 55, 60 million pounds for those two players, 23 years of age and 26 years of age. Yes, why not? And I think McTominay, being told, defensive midfield, mate, nothing more, nothing less, he's doing an all right job. Absolutely. I'd like that. Sean, Gallagher plus McTominay would appear to be good use. See, I didn't read that before, but thank you for agreeing with me. Scott, Alvarez for Mexico was meh. I'm a Canada fan, not super impressed. Yeah, we heard that earlier. We talked about that earlier. Apparently, he wasn't that impressive. Daniel, I would love Harwood Bellis, Alvarez, Gallagher, and Carl Walker. Carl Walker-Peters, sorry. Yeah, Harwood Bellis, good backup. Yeah. Palace looking at Damari Gray. Does anyone rate him? I think he's all right, Trini. Yeah, all right, but not one I'm going to be jumping up and down about, but not bad. Excuse me. Do forgive me for jumping a few. I'm trying to catch up. How far behind am I? Still about 15 minutes. James, got to beat Brentford. Is it going to be a short or long throw? Caused us to panic defensively last season. Few teams panicked us last season, mate. Brentford was one of them. Garant, good evening to you. It's Moyes who puts Antonio up front on his own. It's not Antonio's fault we only play one way. I agree. Look, I'm not knocking Antonio, but I think for me, Antonio, 33 years of age, I think, time has come for us to not have to rely on him as our starting player. I really hope Scamacca comes good this season. I really do. Jonathan, 50 mil for Broha and Gallagher will be incredible. I don't like Broha. I said this last week. I don't like Broha, to be honest with you. I'm not mad about him. For me, he had one good half season at Southampton, fell away the second half of that season. I know he had an injury as well last season, etc., which put him out for the season and so on. But I'm not mad about him. I like Gallagher. I'm not so mad about Broha. Schmiegel, Stel, would you take Daichi Kamada as he's available? Yes, I would. I don't know how old Kamada is. 28, maybe? Someone could remind me. I like him. I think he's the one that unpicked us in the semi-final in the first leg. MJ, good evening to you. I'd take Gallagher all day long. I mean, who did well at Chelsea for last season? Scott, in my opinion, it's time for Antonio to go. Watching him pout and literally walk around the pitch at Fulham got rid of any respect for him. I think it's time. He needs something new. He needs something new. Foe, I'd take Kamada just for the Japanese merchandising opportunities. Would make millions in shirt sales alone, and he's a great player on a free transfer after his Milan move fell through. I'd like him. Why not? See, now there's a combination. You get him for nothing. I don't know how old he is. I think he's about 28. I could be wrong. You get him for nothing, though. Kamada. Look how it's shaping up, people. Get on that phone to Moyes right now. Kamada, Gallagher, and whoever, Sangara or McTominay. I'm happy with that. That's the person I wanted. Perkins. Thank you. Who? He's now playing at Leeds and they got relegated. John, Stel, what about the shirt issues? Why are they so expensive? Now, have you noticed we got Burnley shirts, Villa got ours, and Burnley got Villa's? I know. I've seen it. And I did an image for Sean to put on 6'2" about the breakdown in the pricing, etc. It's mad. I don't agree with it. 75 quid. Go to dhgate.com. Didn't hear it here. and go and buy it for 20 quid, and you'll be just as happy. E. Davis. These links with big name players seem to be like a smokescreen by the club to get other players in cheaper. Good shout. Why not? Could be a smokescreen. Aki, good evening to you. Taylor Harwood-Bellis, young centre back at Man City, very good in the back three and a back two, good character. Absolutely agree. Talked about him earlier on, and I would love to have him at West Ham United. Yeah. Funky T. Apparently, Alex McAllister has been seen at London Docklands looking at a flat in the same block as Moyes, apparently. See? Epic. Loan with an option to buy is a classic Sully move. It is a Sully move, but Moyes doesn't like it, which is why it didn't ring true with. And I wonder, maybe, as I said earlier on, maybe that was a little bit of influence from Steidten to say, don't go out and buy Maguire for 35 mil, mate. Don't do that. Sean, Gallagher price has been reported in 25 to 35. So you weren't wrong. Okay. 25 to 35. Look, 25, maybe what it will be is we'll agree on 30 with a few add-ons. Get the fucking deal done. Get him in. Wouldn't that cheer us up? Martin, good evening to you. Conor Gallagher will be a great move and 35 million is reasonable. Daniel, here Steidten has just handed his notice in. Not being listened to. Bo, 35 million sounds more realistic. Sean, Sky Sports Germany reported valuation at 25 to 35 million euros. See, it gets better every time, doesn't it? 25 to 35 million euros is like 10 quid. Jonathan, Rice thinks, and as many fans do, that he carried West Ham. He's about to get a rude awakening. Come on, you Irons. Fuck that, mate. We will prove him wrong. Schmeigel, I miss watching Peach on YouTube. Would go to bed and wake up and he would still be streaming. That's so true. Scarborough, Conor Gallagher, Harwood-Bellis, Alvarez, and then a Tim Steidten young gem of an attacker would be an ideal window. There you go. I'm cheering you all up already. Jackie, you said Sully is here a few more years. So will Moyes. No. Sullivan owns the club. He'll be here a few more years. Moyes has got 1 year left on his contract, and then cheerio. Jonathan, Rice money aside, what was this window's budget? Also, we spent more than 100 million last season, so it's not a special number. We could see something special. In all honesty, when people say that we will only spend what we buy, only spend on what we bring in, that's not wrong. And I know people will be unhappy with that, but there is financial fair play. And I know people are going, yeah, well, Man United only got a small fine, etc., etc. That small fine was about overestimating their losses during COVID a couple of years back. So all this stuff that's happening at the moment, Man City is still not out in the clear with financial fair play. They've broken a whole load of rules. I'm waiting to see what's going to happen with them. Arsenal, spending all this money now, they can because they're forward planning, so that's why they didn't want to spend all the Declan Rice money in 2 years, because they've got to now, but they've got to now, that's in their budget. It's like, we spent a large chunk of our money. They won't be able to spend that money next season, in next summer transfer window, etc. They'll be hampered. They'll have to sell, and I know people are going, I don't believe all this rubbish about financial fair play. Man United only got a small fine. Man United only got a small fine because of overstating their losses during COVID. It could be. We stated our losses, I think, at 65 million during COVID. We overestimated ours as well. It could be we might get a fine for that as well. So going back to your question, we really do only have money that's coming in. So at this moment in time, we should have £100 million to spend. All right, we're only getting 33 million as first tranche, etc. But then that's sort of estimated. FFP, UEFA will know that we've got that 100 million. It's coming in quick rather than over a period of 4 or 5 years. So yeah, unfortunately, our Windows budget is what we sell. So if we sell any more players, that will go on, my understanding, to this Windows budget. Now, if we do, let's say for argument's sake, we get a centre back in at say 25 million. Let's say we do get Gallagher at 30. Let's split it. Let's say 30 million. That's 55 million. Defensive midfielder another 25, 30 million, let's say 30 million, that's 85 million. That's already 3 players, or well, 1, 2, 3. That's already 3 players. Yeah, we could buy up to 4 players and not spend all that 100 million. Again, why I think Steidten is having a big say in what happens. 26. It's a no-brainer. I'd love for it to happen. 26. Decent player. Jerry, anything on Ings? No, nothing. If a club comes in for him, look, every player's got a price. If a club comes in for Antonio and offers 10 million, or for Ings and offers, say, 10 million, or comes in for Ben Rama and offers 25 million, they will be considered, but so long as we know, and I've just said this, we will get a replacement for those players. But no one's coming in for bids for any of our players at the moment. The only bid that there has been for Declan Rice, and the only bid that I'm aware of that is a possibility is for Ben Johnson going to Everton. That's quite a possibility. And that's why we're linked to Max Aarons of Norwich to replace him and all that sort of stuff. And so, if a bid comes in the right price, if a bid for Paquetá comes in at 80 million, we're not going to sit back and go, well, no, we will consider it. Would we sell him? I don't think so. If a bid comes in for Scamacca at 35 million, he will go. I don't think we'll let Paquetá go, but certainly if we recoup our money on Scamacca, we will let him go, and then we'll go out and buy a replacement. That's how it's working at the moment. John, Stell has a problem with people from Slough, hence his dislike of Broja. Not at all. Not at all. I just don't think he's good enough. I mean, I know. I think you think I'm mad, but I genuinely don't. Robert, good evening to you. Can we not blood 2 or 3 of the under 18s straight to the first team? George Earthy, Casey, and Divine and Barmer. That's a tall order. It really, and I get it. And I get why you want to ask that and say that. But the worst thing that could happen to a young player is to come in, to be thrown in at the deep end, really screw up, and then that screws them up for forever, for their career. It's happened before, and no, I think they're going through a process, and I think it's the right process to go through. They proved that they were well beyond the under 18s league. They're now, most of those players, Earthy, etc., will play regularly for the under 21s. If they prove themselves there, then we'll see what happens thereafter. And I think that's when we'll start seeing them come through. Fo, Stella Swaku, hostage video, new sponsorship. Come on, Stel, your audience awaits. Well, if I get a sponsor, I'll do a video. John, we can't get Kamata, got rid of Rice. David, Ings for JWP Southampton. Do we need him? I wouldn't say no to Ward-Prowse, so long as it's the right price, 20 million, but no more than that. Ings going to Southampton, interesting story, but I've not heard any more about it. That's it, people. I've just talked for 2 hours, and I hope I hope you've understood everything I've said. But anyway, so the big news is that there isn't any. No, the big news is that tonight we hear that we're in for Conor Gallagher. I hope it's true. I hope that goes through. That'll be fantastic. Apparently, we put in a loan bid for Maguire. We got turned down. That's all very well. Good. Let's move on. Apparently, we put in a £40 million bid for Palhinha. That got turned down. So let's move on from there as well. Let's not go back. I don't want to spend any more money on a 28-year-old Palhinha. So that's your news. Scamacca's not going. Paquetá's not going. Ben Johnson may well do. Who's in charge of transfers? I think Steidten's got a bigger say than you realise. Thank you all for watching. Really much appreciated. I'm running out of voice. Have a wonderful week. I will be back during the week. I was meant to be back during the week and do a few shows, a few pre-recorded shows, but I had the lurgy. I was in bed for literally 3 days. I don't know what happened to me. Got like the flu or whatever. But I will be back during the week with a few pre-records and maybe another live show at the end of the week. But I'll let you know. Have a great week. See you all soon. And come on, you irons.